Watch me become the unexpected wedding hero, racing against time to return a lost ring and save the biggest day of a lifetime. Will I make it before it's too late? Marisol pushed the mop bucket across the polished marble floor, its squeaky wheels echoing in the cavernous lobby. Sunlight poured in through the Grand Royal Hotel's towering windows, bathing everything in a golden glow that seemed to mock her worn uniform and scuffed shoes. She paused for a moment, breathing in the scent of roses and expensive perfume that wafted through the air, and forced herself to keep moving. Today was the wedding of the year. White lilies cascaded from the ceiling in artful arrangements, and crystal chandeliers caught the light like stars. Everywhere she looked, there were symbols of wealth and beauty, details that spoke of a world she would never truly enter. Yet, she felt no bitterness, only the quiet ache of longing she had learned to swallow years ago. Her thoughts drifted to Lucia, her daughter, at home with Abuela. Lucia's laughter was a melody Marisol carried in her heart, even on the hardest days. She imagined her daughter's hopeful face, eyes as bright as the chandeliers above her. Lucia deserved a future free of worry, yet the price of that freedom pressed down on Marisol's shoulders with every step. She focused on the task at hand, scrubbing away invisible stains with practiced efficiency. Outside the ballroom, staff scurried in a controlled chaos, florists adjusting last-minute arrangements, waiters rehearsing their routes, the bride's stylists fussing over every stray curl. The air was electric with anticipation, but Marisol felt like a shadow in the corner of a dream. She slipped into the bride's suite, her eyes immediately drawn to the lavish details, a vanity scattered with jewelry, silken robes draped over plush chairs. The bride had stepped out for final touches, leaving the room in a hush of expectation. Marisol moved swiftly, her hands deft and sure as she gathered used towels and discarded tissues. As she emptied a silver trash bin near the vanity, something caught her eye, a glint of light, sharper and more insistent than the polished glass around her. Her breath caught in her throat. She reached in and pulled out a wedding ring, platinum-banded, with diamonds that shimmered like tears. She stared at it, her pulse pounding. For a fleeting moment, the world around her stilled. She closed her eyes, imagining the comfort this ring's worth could bring, medicine for her mother's failing health, new shoes for Lucia, maybe even enough to start a small dream of her own. The thought was intoxicating. Yet even as her mind raced, her heart twisted in her chest. She knew what the ring meant. It was not just metal and stone, it was a promise, a future, a symbol of love that deserved to be whole. Marisol clenched the ring in her palm, her hand shaking. She glanced at the mirror across the room and saw herself reflected back, a maid in a borrowed uniform, sweat clinging to her brow, yet holding something more precious than any jewel. With a deep breath, she slipped the ring into her pocket. She didn't know what she would do next. She only knew that this day, this wedding of the century, had become more than a celebration for the wealthy. It was a moment that would test her very soul. Marisol stood frozen in the bride's suite, the weight of the diamond ring pressing against her palm. Around her, the room exhaled luxury, gilded frames, velvet drapes, and fresh orchids that spilled their fragrance like secrets. But all she could see was the ring, cold and perfect, a symbol of everything she'd never known. She could almost hear her mother's coughs back home, the brittle rasp that had grown worse with every passing winter. She could see Lucia's shoes, too tight at the toes, and the cracked tile in their kitchen that never stayed clean. The ring glimmered in her hand like an answer to every prayer she'd ever whispered. But as the seconds passed, doubt crept in, quiet and insistent. She remembered the bride's radiant smile that morning, a smile that held dreams spun from childhood stories, of white dresses and forever promises. She thought of the groom's laughter echoing through the ballroom, his eyes bright with devotion. To them, this ring wasn't just an ornament, it was a lifeline, the final piece of a love story that deserved to be whole. Marisol slipped the ring into her apron pocket, her fingers trembling as she stepped back into the hallway. The wedding coordinator, Marta, was pacing, her clipboard clutched like a lifeline. When she spotted Marisol, she hurried over, her voice hushed but urgent. "Have you seen it? The bride's ring, gone." Marta's face was pale, her eyes wide with panic. She's in tears. We've searched everywhere. Marisol's throat tightened. She opened her mouth, but the words caught. In that moment, she realized the power she held and the burden of it. Her decision could ruin or save the day. Her family's survival or someone else's happiness, both truths pulled at her heart with equal force. The noise of the wedding swirled around her, music tuning up in the ballroom, the clatter of cutlery, guests laughing in the distance. It felt surreal, like she was standing outside of time. She thought of how easy it would be to slip away, to pretend she'd never seen the ring, to trade this moment for a chance to breathe easier tomorrow. But she couldn't. She wouldn't. With a breath that steadied her shaking soul, she reached into her pocket and held out the ring. I found this, she said softly, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. In the trash. I think it's hers. Marta gasped, relief flooding her features. She took the ring from Marisol as if it were spun from light itself, her fingers trembling. You don't know what this means, she whispered. You've saved everything. Marisol gave a small, quiet nod, though her heart still pounded in her chest. As Marta rushed to return the ring, Marisol stood alone in the hallway, the weight of what she had chosen settling around her like a cloak. She had given up her chance for a miracle, but in doing so, she had chosen something else, something that felt bigger than money or survival. She had chosen to protect a dream, and in that decision, she felt her own worth, shining brighter than any diamond. Marisol stepped into the staff corridor, her heartbeat still drumming in her ears. She felt the weight of her decision pressing against her chest, a decision that had cost her more than the ring's glittering promise. Outside, laughter and music soared through the hotel's grand halls, a symphony of celebration. Yet in the quiet of the back halls, her breath came in ragged gasps, as if she had just run a marathon against her own conscience. She leaned against the cool marble wall, her eyes shut tight. The memory of Lucia's face flickered before her, hopeful, unknowing of the sacrifices Marisol made each day. She imagined what the ring's worth could have bought, the medicine her mother needed, the second-hand laptop that Lucia longed for, the fresh start that seemed forever out of reach. For one trembling instant, she felt the sting of that choice like a blade in her gut. The door to the bride's suite swung open, and Marta emerged, her eyes bright with relief. She clutched the returned ring as if it were a holy relic. You saved everything, Marisol, she said in a low, urgent voice. If the bride had lost this, the entire day would have been ruined. You have no idea what you've done. Marisol tried to smile, but her lips felt heavy. She nodded, offering only a murmur of gratitude. Marta squeezed her arm once, then swept back into the chaos of the wedding preparations, leaving Marisol alone again. She turned and walked to the staff room, each step a battle between regret and pride. She thought of her mother's labored breathing, of the endless bills stacked like walls around their lives. She thought of the wedding guests, people who had never known hunger, and the bride whose tears had nearly ruined her own perfect day. It would have been so easy to keep the ring, to trade someone else's heartbreak for her family's survival. No one would have known. No one but Marisol. And that was enough. She pressed a hand to her chest, feeling the steady beat of her own heart, stronger now, more certain. In that moment, she understood something she had never dared believe, that dignity could be more precious than diamonds, and that some choices had the power to shape not just the day, but the very core of who she was. Oh. The staff room door creaked open. Elena, another maid, poked her head out. Marisol, she whispered, her eyes wide with worry. Are you all right? They said you found the ring. Marisol nodded, her voice calm. I did. It was the right thing to do. Elena's face softened with relief, but Marisol knew the storm inside her had not passed. It might never pass. Still, she took a deep breath and let it out slowly, feeling a quiet strength unfurl within her. She had chosen honesty, chosen to stand firm even when everything around her threatened to crumble. In that choice, she found not just survival, but a kind of grace she had never known. She straightened her shoulders and stepped back into the hallway, ready to face whatever the rest of the day would bring. The ballroom gleamed like a jewel, alive with the shimmer of chandeliers and the quiet rustle of silk dresses brushing against polished floors. Guests gathered in clusters, laughter and anticipation weaving together like the delicate petals of the white lilies that adorned every table. The bride stood at the center of it all, radiant in her gown, the ring that Marisol had returned glinting on her finger like a vow made manifest. Marisol watched from the edge of the room, a silent observer in her modest uniform. The music swelled, a soft piano melody that wrapped around the gathering like a spell. She saw the bride's eyes sparkle as she whispered with her groom, their hands entwined in an unspoken promise that only they could hear. The weight of her choice, the ring she had saved, echoed through the air around her. Marta found her in the corner, her smile bright with relief and admiration. "You did more than find a ring, Marisol," she said softly, her hand warm on Marisol's shoulder. "You saved a moment they'll remember forever. You gave them back their dream." Marisol's lips curved in a small, shy smile. She didn't have the words to explain how much that meant to her. For a fleeting instant, she allowed herself to savor the quiet pride that bloomed inside her chest. She had been tested, and she had chosen the path of integrity, even when her own needs cried out in desperation. She thought of Lucia, waiting at home, and her mother's worn hands. She thought of the life she would return to that night, small, cramped, and filled with challenges that had no easy answers. But for today, she carried something beyond the ache of poverty. She carried a story of honor that would one day be Lucia's inheritance, a lesson she would pass down with every whispered bedtime tale. As the music shifted and the bride and groom stepped forward to exchange vows, Marisol's heart lifted with them. She watched the joy in the bride's eyes, the way her hand trembled just slightly as she slipped the ring back onto her finger. It was a simple motion, but to Marisol, it felt like a declaration that love and hope could still triumph even in the smallest of gestures. The ceremony ended in a flurry of applause and shimmering confetti. Marisol stepped back, blending into the swirl of guests and staff who buzzed with excitement. No one noticed her slip out of the ballroom, but that didn't matter. She knew what she had done. She knew that in a world that often overlooked the invisible, her actions had become a quiet act of defiance, a reminder that even the smallest voice can protect something precious. Outside, the evening air was cool and sweet, carrying the faint scent of roses from the grand archway. Marisol paused, drawing in a deep breath, the crisp night air filling her lungs like a promise. The wedding was saved, and she had played her part. She stepped into the darkness, her heart light and her head held high. And in that moment, Marisol knew she had given a gift that could never be measured in gold or diamonds, the gift of her own unwavering honor.